Hello and welcome to this video. Today we will be answering the question, who do you add to your diversity visa case? Now, to answer that question, we will consider both phases of the diversity visa program. As we are aware, the diversity visa program has two phases. There is the diversity visa lottery and the diversity visa application process. So let's begin with the diversity visa lottery. Who do the diversity visa instructions allow you to add to your diversity visa entry at the time of the diversity visa lottery? Now, a short answer to that question is two persons. The first person is your spouse, that is your husband or your wife, in case you are married. And the second person is your child, or we can also say children. But in the case of a child or children, that child or those children must be below the age of 21 years old and not married on the day you enter the diversity visa lottery. Now, there are two important points to add to that. According to the diversity visa program instructions, in case you are married and or you have a child or children who meet the conditions that are just listed, and you do not add them to your entry at the time you are entering the diversity visa lottery, and you happen to be selected, and it is discovered later at your diversity visa interview, you will be disqualified. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the other way around. That is, in case you add a spouse and or a child or children to your diversity visa entry, and that person or those persons are not your real spouse, child, or children, and you are selected in the diversity visa lottery, and it is discovered at your diversity visa interview, you will be disqualified. So those are two important points to take into consideration in addition to those who you should add to your diversity visa entry at the time of entering the diversity visa lottery. So that concerns your entry that you submit during the diversity visa lottery. Now, in case you get selected in the diversity visa lottery, the question remains, who do you add to your diversity visa application? First, it was your diversity visa entry, and now it is your diversity visa application. And the answer to that question is similar to the answer that we provided in the first case for the diversity visa lottery, that is your spouse and your child or children. But this time around, there is a very important point to take into consideration. And that important point is, when did that spouse, that child or children come into being? According to the diversity visa program instructions, after you get selected in the diversity visa lottery, you are only allowed to add those family members that we spoke about in the first case, in case they came into existence after you entered the diversity visa lottery. So let's consider what that means. Let's begin with the case of the spouse. When we say that your spouse came into existence, a spouse comes into existence by way of marriage. So in case you got married after you entered the diversity visa lottery and you happen to be selected, then you are allowed to add that spouse of yours that you got married to after you entered the lottery. Now, there is a very important point to take into consideration at this point, but before we go into that, let's take a little break and let me invite you to join my diversity visa guidance program. Some of you are already aware of the program, others are not, but I have a diversity visa program for applicants who are in need of guidance for their diversity visa application. The link to my guidance platform is in the description of this video. Click on that link and make use of my diversity visa guidance program for a reasonable monthly subscription fee. And in case you have questions concerning the program, then use the chat feature that is on the platform. Others are already taking advantage of the Guidance program, and they can testify of how helpful it is to their diversity visa application. So do the same. Click on the link in the description of this video and access the platform. And as I said, if you have questions concerning the program, then use the chat feature on the platform. So back to our discussion, and the important point to stress when it comes to adding your spouse to your diversity visa application is that it is not only a spouse that you got married to before the results of the visa lottery were released that you are allowed to add. You can also add a spouse you got married to after you saw that you were selected in the diversity visa lottery. And that is very important. But even more important is that there should be substantial proof of an existing relationship with that person before you got married to that person. And in the case of a child or children, the same applies. In case that child or those children came into existence after you entered the diversity visa lottery and you happen to be selected, then you are allowed to add that child or those children to your diversity visa application. Speaking about coming into existence in the case of a child or children, it means that that child or children were born or legally adopted. So in case your child or children was or were born after you entered the diversity visa lottery, or you happen to have legally adopted that child or those children after you entered the diversity visa lottery, then the diversity visa program instructions allow you to add that child or those children to your diversity visa application after you are selected in the diversity visa lottery. So to summarize, we can say only add to your diversity visa entry or your diversity visa application those legitimate family members that the diversity visa program instructions allow you to add. In case you do not have any legitimate family member who the program instructions allow you to add to your case, then submit your entry or your application as a single applicant. That is what you ought to know when it comes to the question of who to add to your diversity visa case. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching it. As usual, see you either on my Guidance platform or in the next video. Until then, God willing, goodbye.